Thanksgiving has always struck me as one of America's great paradoxes. See, on the surface, it's a day built around gratitude, an intentional pause, a collective breath, a reminder that even in the turbulent times, we can gather, reconnect, and acknowledge what we still have. But beneath that, Thanksgiving has always carried another function. It's the one day when the truth, and I mean real truth, tends to slip out. Families sit together, walls come down, old stories resurface, and suddenly the things nobody wanted to talk about become the only things anyone can talk about. I lived enough life, made enough mistakes, and interrogated enough powerful people to know this. Sooner or later, truth demands its moment. And that's why today's episode feels so fitting for this holiday. It's not light, it's not simple, and it's not wrapped in a neat patriotic bow. But it is honest. You see, weeks ago, long before the newest batch of documents, leaks, and whispered testimonies, I sat down with journalist Michael Wolff for a conversation that I knew at the moment mattered. But I didn't realize just how sharply it would align with everything breaking now. You ever have one of those moments where something you said, something you tried to warn about, suddenly takes shape right in front of you? Well, that's what listening back to this episode felt like. Michael and I, on Mea Culpa, were talking through the Epstein universe, not gossip, not rumor, but the architecture of it. The system, the pipeline of access, and the protection that allowed one man, backed by many others, to operate with breathtaking impunity. Epstein wasn't merely a scandal, he was a blueprint, a case study in how money, power, and silence form an ecosystem designed to keep people untouchable. And yet, here we are, Thanksgiving 2025, and the truth we discussed weeks ago is refusing to stay in the shadows any longer. New documents are surfacing, names, timelines, behaviors that cannot be dismissed as misunderstandings or old news. People who once swore their memories were foggy suddenly remember with stunning clarity. You see, there's a shift happening. It's slow, it's grinding, it's uncomfortable, but it is happening. And if you've ever wondered where the truth has stamina, let me assure you that it does. It's patient, it waits, it grows roots beneath the floorboards of denial. And when the moment is right, it rises. And that's why my conversation with Michael Wolff matters today more than the day I recorded it. Because we weren't just recounting history. We were mapping the psychology of power. It's arrogance, it's delusion, it's belief that the public's attention span is too short and our outrage too fleeting for facts to matter. The Epstein story isn't simply about the crime he committed. It's about the people who created the conditions for those crimes to flourish and the institutions that shrugged, that looked away, or convinced themselves that the collateral damage was acceptable. This isn't about conspiracy. This is about complacency. And complacency, as I've learned the hard way, is just complicity wearing better shoes. And listening to Mike Wolff break down the layers, the personalities, the cover, the culture that insulated Epstein, I felt something I don't always feel when dealing with stories this dark. I felt clarity, not comfort, not satisfaction, but clarity. The kind that doesn't let you sit back and say, well, that's terrible, before returning to your cranberry sauce. It's the kind that forces you to acknowledge the machinery that lets predators operate under the shield of important friends. It's the kind that reminds you that the cost of ignoring the truth is always paid by someone who didn't deserve to pay it. And Thanksgiving, ironically enough, is the perfect day to confront that. Because this holiday isn't just about gratitude. It's about accountability, personal, national, moral. It's about looking around the table and asking, what do we value? What do we protect? What do we tolerate? Families do it every year without realizing it. The country should too. So before you settle into the familiar rhythms of the day, before the football game comes on, before the arguments start, before someone makes the annual plea to, keep it light this year, Take a moment with this episode. Let Michael Wolff and me guide you through the realities, the questions, the patterns, and the truths that have become impossible to ignore. And this Thanksgiving, I'm grateful for a lot. For second chances, for the people who've stuck with me, for the ability to speak truth without fear of who it might unsettle. But I'm also grateful for something else, something quieter but more important. I'm grateful that truth, no matter how deeply buried, never stays buried forever. And today, you're about to hear exactly why. So let's go now to that conversation. Michael Wolff, welcome to Mea Culpa. Good to see you again, my friend. Questions for you. There's so much going on. You're the right guy for the conversation. Mike, why is Pam Bondi, Trump's loyalist turned attorney general, refusing to release the unredacted Epstein files when transparency was supposedly central to this administration's DOJ overhaul?
Well, first thing, I think that's specious to say the best that transparency was ever their interest. But I think whatever Pam Bondi does and whatever she is doing is for one reason only. It's because her client, and that's how Donald Trump sees the attorney general as his lawyer, her client has told her what to do. And obviously in this case, he has said, what are you doing with this Epstein stuff? This has got to be swept under the rug.
Wow. Because look, Pam Bondi claimed, and so did so many others, full disclosure could cause national destabilization. First of all, what exactly does she even mean by that? I've never even heard of a concept like that. National destabilization over a file's release. And is it an admission that there are powerful figures in Trump's inner circle that could be implicated?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, first, I don't exactly know what it means, but I know what is at issue here is that the person most implicated by Jeffrey Epstein, by his relationship to Jeffrey Epstein, is Donald Trump. Forget everybody else in what acquaintance they might have had with him. Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were the best of friends. Daily contact, constantly in each other's lives, hunting women, sharing women, cheating on their taxes together for more than a decade. So that is the central issue here. So how the MAGA people got this so wrong, as they kept saying, Epstein, let us, divulge everything. Let's see everything. When what they would see is the relationship between Epstein and the president of the United States, their central figure in their lives and political movement.
And you base that information off of what? Like, share with my audience.
Okay, I have let me just make the claim here. Everybody who talks about Jeffrey Epstein doesn't really know Jeffrey Epstein. That the people who know Jeffrey Epstein have been so very careful to hide that fact. I am in this anomalous position of being a journalist and the only journalist who actually spoke to Epstein and spoke to him at length. So beginning in 2014, he asked me to consider writing about him. He had been convicted, had spent time in jail, and now he was looking to rehabilitate himself. And he made this offer to me, which is, he made this proposition and I demurred. And then he made an offer. I will be transparent. Come as often as you want. Ask me anything. I will demonstrate my transparency to you. And I will invite you to my house when I have interesting people here and you can see how I live. Now, I was reluctant, but but actually, as I began to talk to him, I found him to be incredibly open. And this began a series of conversations, of hours and hours, 100 hours probably, perhaps more, that I had with Jeffrey Epstein, which then began to segue in 2015, as Donald Trump began to gear up, as he began his political career. And Jeffrey Epstein, from the beginning, said Donald Trump, if he goes through with this, will be the president of the United States. And we began to talk about Trump. And also, I began at this point to write about Trump. And he became just an incredibly important source for me about who Donald Trump was. Jeffrey Epstein, I would say that there are two people, actually three people, one of them being yourself, who have unique insight into the character of Donald Trump. And including you, it would be Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon. And at one point in 2017, the fall of 2017, Steve Bannon met Jeffrey Epstein, and on that occasion, actually, the first thing that Steve Bannon said to Jeffrey Epstein was, "You were the only person I was afraid of during the campaign," meaning the 2016 campaign. Now, I know he said this because I was standing there. So I have, probably I am one of a good witness, probably one of the better witnesses to Jeffrey Epstein and what he said about his relationship to Donald Trump.
So give us like a short take. How did he describe his relationship with Donald Trump? When did it start? When was it at its peak? And when did it stop?
Yes, it started in the late 80s, 88, 89. And went on to until 2004, when they had a falling out over a real estate deal. And during that time, they were as close as you could possibly be. I mean, I think that it was the central relationship, the longest lasting relationship, and the most influential relationship in the lives of both men, and not. And for natural reasons, they were both interested in the same thing: women and money.
Right. The reason why I asked that question is because, I started my relationship with Trump in 2005, and my relationship obviously with Trump lasted for about 13 years thereafter, till 2018, until my indictment.
Right.
And during that period of time, I never heard Jeffrey Epstein's name. I never saw Jeffrey Epstein, not once, in the office. I never heard Jeffrey Epstein on a phone call.
This ended in 2004. There was a piece of real estate in Palm Beach. It was a house. Jeffrey Epstein believed that he was the top bidder in an auction. He had bid $36 million. He took his friend Donald Trump with him to see the house, to advise him on moving the swimming pool. At which point, Donald Trump went around his back and bid $40 million for the house, and ultimately bought the house.
Now, you're talking about the disc-shaped house that he bought from the RTC, the one that was on the ocean.
Yeah, well, it was the one that the Russian oligarch subsequently bought.
Yeah, that's the one. It's the one that
yes.
Dmitry Rybolovlev bought for $95 million.
Exactly. And 2 years later, so from 40 million to 95 million in, I think, less than 2 years. Epstein was furious. These guys at some level, what is the thing that makes them most furious? Real estate. Epstein believed that Trump did not have the money to buy the house. Therefore, he was fronting for someone else. And he began to rattle that cage. He began to go to the press. Epstein was extraordinarily mad about this. And he began to threaten Donald Trump. At which point, Epstein believed that Donald Trump went to the Palm Beach police and said, Jeffrey Epstein has young girls at his house, thereby beginning the legal process which would ultimately bring Jeffrey Epstein down. Now, I've said before that Donald Trump certainly knew what was going on at Epstein's house, and in fact, I have seen pictures, a set of Polaroid pictures that Epstein would sometimes display of Donald Trump prior to 2004 at Epstein's Palm Beach house around the pool with young girls. I mean, I don't know I don't know the ages of these girls, but they were young girls. I would say, let's be specific. I doubt if they were 20 years old. They may have been 18, but I don't know. And there were about a dozen pictures. There are 3 of them I specifically remember. 2 of them with girls sitting on Trump's lap, and they are topless. And then a third, Trump has a stain on the front of his pants, and the girls, 3, 4, 5 girls are laughing, pointing and laughing at him.
Wow. That's
where are those pictures? I know that Epstein kept them in his safe, and we know that safe was raided and emptied by the FBI. Is that part of the so-called Epstein file? I don't know, but those pictures certainly may be part of that.
What about any videotapes? I mean, I know the people that live next door to Jeffrey Epstein here in Manhattan, and as well as literally around him from the back and the front, the whole 9 yards. I have heard from several different people that every person that steps on the doorstep and anywhere in that house is being recorded.
Well,
all the time.
I doubt that. Just because of my personal experience here. Jeffrey was not particularly he didn't particularly have a technical capacity. There was a video camera focused on the door as you came in, and they were always trying to fix it. So it was always breaking, and nobody knew what to do. The people in Epstein's house, the staff there was, largely consisted of a receptionist who made his appointments, a revolving cast of young women. And let me make a distinction between these young women and the young women in Florida. These were the kind of Ivy League-ish young women who were there as as kind of assistants, or they were sort of room decoration too, by the way. But they were. And anyway, my point is it seems hard to imagine that they had the expertise to run a fairly sophisticated video operation. And then the other person was the houseman, Jojo, and I was actually talking to one of Jeffrey's former lawyers the other day, and we were saying, who would have done this? Who would have administered this? Jojo? So I don't know. That is all I know from my personal experience.
Did Jeffrey ever show you any videotape or ever discuss any videotapes
never,
that might have been in existence?
Yes, no, not once.
Understood. So, because Republicans in Congress, and I find this to be odd, especially based upon the conversation that we're having right now, Republicans in Congress are demanding the release of Epstein's client list, unredacted, yet they refuse to subpoena it. You think this is a
Well,
deliberate
yeah,
political
no,
theater?
yes. I mean, I think this is suddenly a complicated thing. We have this, we have two poles here, two poles that have to be bowed to. The MAGA side, and remember, this was an incredibly powerful force in in the modern Republican Party. And then we have the Trump side. So we have Trump, who doesn't want this, who wants to end this conversation, who certainly does not want this material released. So everybody is fundamentally caught in the middle here. And I mean, with some glaring examples, you have Steve Bannon, who has now become the,
Yep. The senior, we'll call him the senior shit stirrer.
Yeah, a central advocate for the Epstein conspiracy. Now, Bannon knows everything that happened with Epstein. They were as close as you could possibly be for the better part of 2 years. And by the way, if there is an ultimate release of Epstein information, including, and that would necessarily include his emails, which the government is in possession of. What you would find is a constant communication between Bannon and Epstein, often a communication about Donald Trump.
Wow. Have you seen any of those communications?
Well, let's see. I have seen some of the emails that Bannon sent to Epstein. This is a scattering because we were speaking at the time. But I certainly know and have witnessed how closely they were in touch. I mean, right. every day, phone calls every day, getting together constantly, talking about business opportunities together and talking endlessly about Donald Trump.
And in what context, if you remember?
Yeah, the context is, they were both obsessed with Trump, and they both hated Trump, I would say. They had both.
Great observation, by the way. I agree with you on that. I believe that Steve Bannon actually deep down dislikes Donald.
Oh,
I think
God,
that he sees himself far above Donald.
Yeah, no, that's what he bonded with Jeffrey Epstein about this, because they both had this experience. They both thought they knew more than anybody about who Donald Trump really was. And this was this was an opportunity both to vent, to share, and to understand further. They both they were constantly sharing information about Trump.
Any of that information relate to any sexual improprieties with underage girls during any of the parties? You think any of those emails contain that?
Well, the conversation is not about underage girls. The conversation is often about girls. And so, Epstein would often recount his experiences with women, hunting women, pursuing women with Trump, including that at one point in their relationship, they shared a girlfriend for, I think, the better part of a year. But there was, in lots of detail about Trump's relationships with women that Epstein had observed. A matter of fact, Epstein regarded Trump's relationship with women as, as somehow, as far worse than his own. So, at one memorable moment of an operatic instance of the pot calling the kettle black. Epstein said to me, the problem with Donald Trump is that he has no scruples.
And coming from Jeffrey Epstein,
There
right?
you
Yeah.
go.
Because the reason I was asking that question about the Republicans, especially the ones in Congress demanding the release, is I see it as political theater, right? And I think a lot of the stuff that's going on right now is basically to stir, and I'm talking about on the GOP side, really to stir this MAGA outrage in hopes that it also doesn't expose their own. Because as I constantly say, Jeffrey Epstein's black book, his list, the ones that everybody's looking to have released, this wasn't about MAGA. MAGA didn't exist then. Jeffrey Epstein was just as happy to invite a Democrat to his house, to the island, as he was a Republican. It didn't make a difference to him. He had, Republicans, Democrats, governors, Congress members, presidents, all coming to
No,
spend
he was,
time there.
yeah, no, I mean, as I say, he was, I mean,
We'll call them an equal opportunity.
yeah, I mean, he immediately bonded with Steve Bannon. So, I mean, Jeffrey Epstein might be somewhat considered loosely a Democrat, although I think he had no political views whatsoever. But certainly, he had no problem bonding with Bannon, and Jeffrey was mostly interested in people of any stripe who had influence.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that one. Let me ask you this, though. Why do you think that this MAGA base is so fixated, literally obsessed, fixated on the Epstein list right now? You think it's about uncovering truth, or do you think it's about using Epstein as kind of like this blunt weapon in this culture war that they just keep fighting about every day?
Yeah, and I have another theory too, that this is the beginning of Donald Trump's lame duck period. And what these people are trying to do, Bannon, Tucker Carlson, the range is beginning to position themselves for what they're going to do post Donald Trump. And they have to differentiate themselves partly from Trump, but partly also from Vance, who has now, he's stuck with Donald Trump. So I think that they're going. I mean, Steve Bannon has always said he wants to be the president of the United States. He should be the president of the United States. Tucker Carlson obviously is. This is more than just crossing his mind. So I think that this is an interesting way to begin to make a wedge between Trump and his ability to anoint a successor and MAGA's ability to pursue its agenda.
Wow. I never thought of it that way, but you're not wrong. Steve Bannon never understood the attention and the dedication and loyalty that people show to Donald Trump, people who have never met him, people who are so diametrically on the other side of the universe from Trump. You're talking about blue collar, Midwest, upper Northern, poor individuals who literally felt some sort of a cult-like connection to Trump where they would defend him literally to the death. Steve Bannon never understood that. And I think he's jealous of that whole thing as he was.
No, and in fact, Bannon believed that he was the author of why they had that connection. So therefore, that connection should be legitimately to Steve Bannon and not to Donald Trump, who he actually always thought it was a kind of a joke that they were connected to Donald Trump.
Yeah. And look, the funniest thing is if you spend any time with Steve Bannon, the only thing that you come away thinking is that he's just a really freaking weird guy. I mean, he dresses fucking weird. He acts weird. He says completely absurd, racist things just out of the blue. He does not have
Well,
in
I, you know,
a magnanimous personality.
I would actually defend Bannon here. I mean, I think Bannon is extremely smart. Spending time with him is always illuminating and entertaining. I would, however, say that I have never in my long life of meeting many people who want many things, never met an opportunist like Steve Bannon.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's I never did I say that he's not a smart guy. He's very well versed in what he knows. But he's just not a magnetic personality. He's actually, he could be incredibly abrasive, as could Trump, by the way, but Steve Bannon takes it to a level of just animus. And I mean, I spent, unfortunately, quite a bit of time with him.
Mm-hmm.
Never liked him. We never got along. We were cordial but never friendly.
I
If
used to go see Bannon at the Regency Hotel, and
Uh-huh.
then one of his things is that he was always trying to avoid running into you in the elevator of the Regency.
Yeah, I don't blame him. Meanwhile, Democrats, while the Republicans are out there, especially as you said, trying to peel MAGA away from the cult of Trump and into, I don't know, the cult of Bannon, Tucker Carlson, Dan Bongino, whoever it might be, the Democrats, for the most part, they've gone completely silent. It's like frickin' crickets. Why aren't they demanding the files to be released? You think it's fear of political damage, or do you just think it's complicity in the protection racket?
No, I mean I think it's probably that always golden piece of political advice when your enemies are burning, just let the fire go on. Just stand back. So,
Well,
but I think the Epstein thing is a very complicated thing which many people don't understand. I mean, the mainstream media writ large, and let's yeah, I think they're always kind of a fair reflection of basic democratic sensibility, has avoided this story, absolutely avoided this story for years now. And I know I've had firsthand experience with this because I've looked for ways and outlets to tell this story. And I mean I am the person probably best positioned to tell this story, to give a picture of who Epstein the man was, and to shed all kinds of light on his relationships with powerful people, and specifically with Donald Trump. And I'm pretty good at telling these stories. And certainly when I tell them about Donald Trump himself, everybody wants to hear. No one has wanted to hear in the mainstream media about this story about Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I think this is beginning to change. Like this past week, it started to change. But there has been this reluctance. Epstein, nobody wants to talk about it. I not too long ago when I was having a discussion with my publisher, who generally would publish anything that I want to write about, and I said, let's do this. This is in the past year. Let's finally do this Epstein. They said, it's too icky. So I think that the mainstream doesn't know how to talk about this story. Epstein has been so demonized, so portrayed as the
king of all pedophilia. Yeah.
As evil, yes, that they can't then use him as a witness against Donald Trump. I mean, this is a complicated. It's just everybody has gotten themselves into a box on this.
Yeah, you see, what I don't understand is, maybe I'm a little bit different, but, to just push back on your point, if the house is on fire, and it's your enemy's house, you just sit back and watch it burn. That's not necessarily my theory or my reaction. My reaction would be if the enemy is standing outside watching the house burn, I'm throwing him in the house, right? And that's why I don't understand why the Democrats are sitting there silent. If the
Well, I
Republicans,
think I would say their view is that Donald Trump is in the House, that the MAGA people are now, for the first time, it might seem that there is a real threat, the real possibility of damaging Donald Trump. And if the Democrats start to do this, start to get on the side, then it becomes the Democrats trying to damage Donald Trump, which then is the justification for Donald Trump's defense. But
we've
if
heard
the
the same
MAGA
story.
people,
You ever put on a shirt and immediately regret your life choices? Well, with True Classic, that doesn't happen. These guys started with one simple idea: premium, comfortable clothing that actually fits without charging a fortune. And you know what? They nailed it. 25 million shirts sold, 5 million happy customers. I'm one of them. Over 200,000 five-star reviews. That, my friends, is not luck. That's a brand doing it right. You see, here's the thing. True Classic isn't just about fabric or fit. It's about confidence, about putting on a shirt that makes you look like you've got your life together, even if, well, let's be honest, you don't. It's effortless, it's clean, it's tailored where it should be, relaxed where it needs to be, and it actually feels good. The material is great. And it's a great gift that actually works. Dads, brothers, partners, friends, now even women and kids. True Classic has everyone covered. I mean, you're giving comfort, style, and confidence, all without bankrupting yourself on some designer label that'll sit in the closet untouched. You see, I've been wearing these shirts for months now. There's no bunching, no stiff cardboard fabric, just a fit that works in real life, at home, at work, or wherever you're pretending to have it all together. So skip the overpriced nonsense. Give comfort, give confidence, give True Classic. And you can find them at Amazon, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, or you can just go straight to trueclassic.com/Cohen and grab the perfect gift for everyone on your list. Again, that's True Classic, TrueClassic.com/Cohen. Go there now. Yeah, but Mike, we've heard the same story now for many years. E. Jean Carroll was going to knock Trump off the block. We've heard it with with Trump University. We heard it with the criminal case. We heard it with the civil case. We heard it with the defamation case.
I remember when how many times were you going to knock him? You were the silver bullet. I always thought that.
9 times they
Yes,
wanted me to do it.
always thought you would take him out. And nothing takes him out. And I'm not sure
No.
this will take him out either or damage him. I would imagine that in the next several days, he will figure out some Trumpian way to change the subject. And then we will be on to something else and we will have forgotten about this.
Well, this won't go away because of the people like the Steve Bannons, the Tucker Carlsons, even the Dan Bonginos. This is going to be a recurring thorn in the side. I personally have a belief here, and mine is that Trump is not one of those that actually participated in the underage relationships that Jeffrey Epstein had offered. Knowing Trump as I do, to be very honest with you, and it's different than what he tries to portray himself, as this great ladies' man and so on. He's not. He's not, and he's germaphobe. He doesn't necessarily. I have friends who are like really super sexual sort of guys, and I know how they speak and I know how they act, and it's not really the same as Trump. I do believe that there was a lot of bad shit going on, and I'm not questioning any of these young ladies, but Trump is just not. He's just not like this. To him,
this
women is transactional. It's not sexual, if that
um,
makes sense.
well, and I'm sure for Epstein it was transactional. Sex was transactional too. But I think that the larger issue and the issue at this point, which I think it's would be certainly hard to explain, is Donald Trump's close relationship. Close. Who's your best friend? If you said to Donald Trump, "Who's your best friend in life? Who was your best friend in life?" The truthful answer would be Jeffrey Epstein.
I think if you
So,
ask Donald that question, even under a lie detector, I think
of
he would say
course,
he has three best friends in his whole life: me, myself, and I.
yes, of course, he
Because
wouldn't have.
he
But
does.
the actual truth, if it could be, and I think that if you exposed all of the information available about Jeffrey Epstein, one thing you would find the clearest pattern is that in his adult life, the person he was closest to, had most bonded with, spent the most time with, is Donald Trump.
Interesting. Let me ask you this. From what's been visible in terms of the Epstein related documents, you see signs of, or did you see signs of intentional shielding, particularly around, say, finance, foreign intelligence, or political ties?
Well, I don't know. I mean, because we don't know these what documents are there. We haven't seen anything.
From the documents that you know.
I know something about Epstein's foreign ties. Tucker Carlson is making him a spy, and this and that. Epstein was a guy who amassed lots of information, which he would share with anyone who he thought would give him some advantage. And advantage, I mean, just the kind of who would introduce him to someone even more influential. Epstein was fundamentally not a spy; he was a social climber. Now there actually is a fine line somewhere, because
Right.
he understood the value of information. But was he a spy in that conventional sense? No, he was actually a gossip, and thrived on any kind of gossip that he could get, and that he could then share with this retinue of influential people who showed up at his house every day. The gossip was more in the form, less in the form of intelligence than it was in the form of entertainment. Although, yes, you could learn things about it from him, learn things that you might not otherwise know, and that you would take away that would be interesting, and maybe you could even profit on this information. But it certainly was not information that he was transacting between foreign powers. And the conspiracy is much more human than certainly Tucker Carlson would make it out to be.
The reason why I asked that is, off of your comment that, Jeffrey Epstein would say that Trump was his best friend, and he believes that Trump would say that they were best friends. I've always heard that Jeffrey Epstein considered Les Wexner to be his closest friend. Literally, for many, many years. Les Wexner is actually the one who had given him, for $1, a $80 million townhouse on 71st Street. I could assure you that Trump probably never even bought Jeffrey Epstein a burger. I mean, it's hard to imagine that, the relationship between Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein was not greater than that of Donald and Jeffrey. I
Well,
think that
I think, and I don't, yes, I think, Wexner was a close relationship. If I had to parse this, I would parse that that Wexner was this one of the central business relationships in
Yeah.
Epstein's life. But the interesting thing is, I think that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were genuinely friends. That they just, they just were bros together. They liked doing the same thing. They liked being out at night together. They liked being in Palm Beach together. They liked being on an airplane together. I mean, Epstein always used Trump of being cheap, and so wanting to use Epstein's airplane and to save money on his own. So I don't. I mean, that is certainly the picture I have of this.
But you know what's really interesting about Jeffrey Epstein, even more than anything anybody's even discussing? It's the contacts and the relationships that somehow he managed to forge and build. Jeffrey Epstein at one point in time was teaching over at the Dalton School early on, before, which is, I guess, how maybe he met Les Wexner. One of his kids, I think, was there. But he was hired, if I'm not mistaken, by the principal, the headmaster of the school, who by coincidence is Bill Barr's father. I mean, it's why I'm saying that Jeffrey Epstein is such a fascinating character in so many ways, because so many people around him have turned out to be, obviously, we'll call them, for lack of a better term, masters of the political universe.
Totally, completely. I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein story is an extraordinary one.
Yeah, and I think you should definitely be writing it. So let me ask you this then, because there's Jeffrey Epstein, we'll call it 2.0, and I'm referring to Ghislaine Maxwell, who herself is the daughter of Robert Maxwell, an incredibly wealthy man, at the time. Why do you think no one's asking why Ghislaine is in prison for trafficking minors to, and this is based upon the information coming out of the DOJ right now, trafficking minors to no one, right? I mean, doesn't the DOJ's refusal to release names or to acknowledge that these names even exist make her conviction look like it's a
yeah? Well, I mean, I've always
show
think,
trial?
yeah. I mean, I think that she was, Ghislaine was the fall guy.
You mean
here.
like me?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think that they had to, somebody had to pay for this. Jeffrey Epstein was dead. Who do they turn to? And she was certainly shocked by everyone, because otherwise she would have long ago fled the jurisdiction. I think that, I think that what she is most likely guilty of is, she solicited young, women under the age of whatever the statute in Florida is, 18, for Jeffrey Epstein. I think she is undoubtedly guilty of that. In terms of anything else, in terms of the whatever we're talking, the blackmail, the trafficking, this is this seems part of the great smoke that's been created around this. And I mean, the Ghislaine, what does she know? This is a common thing. My sense is she doesn't know very much.
Right. And that's what I keep saying to people. And then people get angry at me for saying it. And they say, why would you ever say such a thing? Well, if she had something to trade for her freedom, obviously, that information would have been put out there obviously a long time ago.
And the other thing about Ghislaine is that she was out of the picture by 2004. As soon as Epstein's legal problems began in 2004, 2005, she was out of the picture. So the last, 13 years of his life, she's not there. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, I agree with you, and obviously, that's the obvious thing that she would be, if she had something to trade to her advantage, she would have done the trade.
Damn straight she would have. Let me ask you this question because you know more about this truthfully than, as you say, than anybody out there. What's your take on the leaked internal DOJ memo suggesting certain names be permanently sealed due to what they called strategic geopolitical risk? Who do you think fits that description?
I don't know. I mean, I know that there are, various people that Epstein had relationships with, um, including, MBS, the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel, and you could continue on this
Prince
list.
Andrew.
Yes, I mean Epstein was operating at a incredibly high level, and I wouldn't necessarily say of political intrigue, and might say of social climbing. He liked the ability to consort with people of great influence, and he did this in a way that was, I would say, less less underhanded and conspiratorial and shadowy than it was, like many people we know who just are very good at insinuating themselves among people who they think an association with will then somehow increase their own personal standing.
Okay, but he also lived a huge life. I mean, when he was, for example, and I didn't know that story that he was bidding on that same house that Trump ended up buying. The question becomes, where did Jeffrey
Absolutely. Where does the money come from?
come
And
from?
it is a profound question, a totally fascinating question. And this was a lot of money. So he dies with a fortune, with assets worth $600 million. I think we can safely soon assume, if we know of $600 million, there's probably another $600 million that we don't know about. Um, um, and he lived, and he amassed this money while spending, I'd say that lifestyle costs $50 million a year. I
Yeah,
mean, there's homes in New York, the largest private residence in Manhattan, Paris, Palm Beach. He was among the largest landowners in New Mexico, the island in the Caribbean. This costs a lot of money. Planes, helicopters galore.
staffing, sure. I mean,
Um,
yeah. So my only question is an answer I've never been able to get from anybody. It's like, what did he actually even do for a living? Where did this income come from, other than the fact that his black book, his Rolodex, now we're dating ourselves, of course, was so significant. If there
well,
was somebody,
I think that some of the answers are obvious. He had obviously relationships with several figures, very prominent and very wealthy individuals who, and there's always, why did they pay him? Why did Wexner pay him this money? Leon Black too has been in the crossfire of paying Jeffrey enormous sums. And the conclusion is, well, he must be blackmailing them. I certainly never saw any evidence of this, and rather, I tend to believe that they actually valued, whether mistakenly or not, valued the advice that he had to offer and the relationship that he had with them. I mean, Jeffrey was very charismatic and very intelligent. Intelligent, and I mean that in a way that he had a way of explaining things, of stepping into the problems that these people might have, of seeming to make them his own problems. They liked being with him. They trusted him. Um,
yeah. I'm still not
Um,
sure that that equates to 50 million a year. A lot of people trust me too, think I'm kind of funny, have a, relatively decent, personality
I
and
get
good
it.
advice.
I
Nobody's
get
nobody's
it.
paying me even a tenth of that.
I get it. Um, I get
Yeah.
it.
So let me ask you this, Mike. Pam Bondi said that at this present moment, that she's balancing what she referred to as justice with responsibility. But when you have the public, when you have victims who are begging for full disclosure, whose responsibility is she prioritizing?
Well,
Those,
I think it's very clear, and you know, when when the second administration began, Donald Trump was intent on avoiding all or some of the mistakes he made in the first time around, and among those mistakes was having an attorney general who was not absolutely loyal to him. You know, the attorney general of the United States says that's for the past number of decades, certainly since Watergate, we've created an office which was in the importance of which was its independence, when in fact it is part of the executive branch. It functioned with considerable independence from the executive branch, that is to say, from the West Wing and the president. Well, in the second administration, Donald Trump was very clear he didn't want that, and his first choice of attorney general, a completely inappropriate choice, was Matt Gaetz, and that did that who had professed his loyalty to Donald Trump absolutely and completely. But that was so inappropriate that he was dinged. Then came Pam Bondi. A lot of people in the Trump circle said if Gaetz was the least qualified lawyer in Florida to take the job of attorney general, Pam Bondi was the second least qualified. But it was also made very clear to her she was the president's lawyer. He was the client. She needed to be willing to take instructions from him. Um, and and I know this from several people involved at that point in that selection, that she agreed with this.
yeah.
That was the terms. She agreed. So
But
I
they
think,
all did, Mike. Every one of the cabinet members have agreed to take the loyalty pledge.
of
You know,
course.
and
So I think,
what really knocked Matt Gaetz off the block as AG really wasn't the fact that he had pledged complete and total fealty, not to the Constitution, but to one man. It was really his actions and behavior towards Kevin McCarthy, which caused that whole rigmarole of the change into now Mike Johnson. A lot of people, a lot of GOP members there in the House, they really liked Kevin McCarthy a lot. They knew him, they respected him, they worked with him, and this was their payback, to him, which Donald was unable to advance past. And so you're right. He went to option number two, who is just a much better looking and slightly brighter version for the AG.
yeah. But at the end, the answer to the question of why is she doing this is that's what the client wants.
Yeah. So let me ask you this then, because some of the redacted names, I've heard this from insiders, that some of the redacted names are rumored to be sitting members of Congress. I mean, shouldn't that alone override any so called institutional harm argument and demand the immediate release? If
Well,
there are members
yeah,
of Congress,
I think there's a lot of arguments for why this material should be released. I mean, in a quick scan of who in Congress might have been um, associated with Epstein, I can't. I mean, certainly nothing comes immediately to mind, and I would the likelihood that I would have known or heard a name is high, not total, but high. So again, I would come back to that. There's a lot of red herrings here, and a lot of efforts to deflect from the main subject, which is Donald Trump.
Sure. Well, I guess obviously there is a second one, which will be kind of like the final question. The hour goes on. I could ask you 1,000,001 questions all day long, but the hour coming to an end. I was contacted about a year ago, a little over a year ago, by Mark Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, asking me through my company, Crisis X, if I would consider taking him on as a client in order to get better information on whether or not Jeffrey had taken his own life, or was this some sort of a inside job. He's of the opinion that it was an inside job, that Jeffrey was going to have a bond hearing in like 2 days and so on. I turned down the offer. I do believe personally that he took his own life. I'm listening to the stupidity of people talking about the 60 seconds on a tape and so on. This didn't happen in 60 seconds, let me be clear. And even if it did, you still have to see people walking in to the cell and then walking out. I mean, the whole thing to me is just, it doesn't make sense to me why it's not free running. My question to you, you agree with me? You think he took his life, or you think that there's something more nefarious going on here?
Big sigh. I find it very hard to accept the version of how he would have had to have killed himself to break his own neck. Equally, however, I find it impossible to believe that if there had been something that happened, if someone had done this to him, or in any other nefarious stuff, that a half a dozen U.S. attorneys and as many FBI agents would be silent about it. Those guys are strict careerists. They're not going down for anybody on this. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Obviously everything here is suspicious, and there are things in life you can say it's suspicious without coming to a conclusion, and I would not. And I know, by the way, that there are many indications that would say that, a circumstance would say that he probably did kill himself. I mean, he redid his will in the days prior to his death. So, and I know that he was exceedingly, I can't even, I was going to say uncomfortable, but that's hardly the word. I think it was painful. The circumstance of being in jail for him was, and it's, I guess being in jail is painful for everyone.
Yes, it is.
You might be able to, but there are reasons to believe that it was even more painful for Jeffrey. And I know that has to do with his health, and there were a lot of issues there. So is it possible? Would there be a logic to him killing himself? Absolutely. And I know other friends of people who were friends with Epstein who believe absolutely he killed himself.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I am fascinated by the conversation. Yes, you probably know more about Jeffrey Epstein than anybody. Well, let me again thank you for joining on Mea Culpa. One of these days when we're sitting down having a breakfast again together, the two of us.
I have many questions for you.
And I have even many more for you. So thank you. And I'll definitely be seeing you right after the summer, hopefully.
Great. See ya.
You got it.